Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this special City Commission meeting this September 13th, 2023. We appreciate your attendance, and we are here to discuss one item in particular, which is with regard to temporary headquarters for the police facility and the options of where we will be trying to enter into a lease agreement for that purpose. Mr. Clerk, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Herbst?
Present.
Commissioner Glassman?
Here.
Vice Mayor Beasley-Pittman? Here. Commissioner Sturman?
Here.
Mayor Trentalis?
Here. So, Mr. City Manager, you want to begin this discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So, as you all requested, we provided the proposals for police headquarters for a temporary period of 24 months. This would assist our police department to have office space and operate as best as possible while the police headquarters building is being constructed. We asked the City Commission to please approve the proposal so that we can have the police staff that is in much dire need of office space so that they can operate their back office operations and also have service continuity with those things that they need to do on a daily basis. So before you have the proposals, the details, and staff is available to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. So when we last left off, there was a proposal by the staff suggesting that we take on space at 1901 West Cypress Creek Road. And then there was an alternative proposal, which Mr. Gross, who is the current, I would say current landlord at 1515 West Cypress Creek Road. And there was concern about the discrepancy in terms of availability of space, needs by the police department, the cost per square foot, and taxes. My concern, of course, was all of those items. And so, is the police chief here?
Yes, he is. Chief Lynn?
Chief Lynn, could you please come to the podium?
Mayor, while we're waiting for the chief, I need to object to this item as it's being presented tonight. I have conveyed my concerns about this to the city attorney and the city manager, and let me explain what those concerns are.
Sure.
So you may recall that back in August, I made a motion which was seconded by, I believe, Commissioner Sturman, and there was a vote 4-1, which you participated in, to approve the lease for Kaplan subject to final reduction in writing to include the oral representations made by Mr. Gross during the meeting. So the lease was approved, and all we were waiting for was for the attorney's office to come back with the final written draft for subsequent approval. We had discussion at the last meeting on September 5th, which now has resulted in 2 leases coming forward. We have already approved a lease. This is in no way, shape, or form an appropriate methodology by which we should be doing this. There was no vote taken at the September 5th meeting. There was no motion, there was no second, there was no vote. This is inappropriate, and I object to it strenuously. We are violating our own procedures and our policies.
All right, well,
I'm sorry, I'm going to finish that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So it's okay.
It sounds like
anything.
The final,
I was pausing for my breath.
Arguments.
I was pausing for breath, Mayor. Thank you, but I appreciate that. So, as you know, as a lawyer, that you have to do something with the same dignity under law. You cannot revise an ordinance through discussion. You cannot revise a resolution through discussion. You cannot revise a motion through discussion. Once the legislative body has taken a vote and action has been agreed upon, you cannot undo that through conversation. We did not have a subsequent motion to add an additional lease to this item. We have one item that should be before us, and that is the approval of the lease as drafted and presented by the city attorney's office. Anything else is inappropriate.
Okay. Since I did vote for that, I wanted to let you know what I believe I voted for. We had a term sheet which was presented to us by Mr. Gross. We did not have a lease before us. I never voted for a lease. I voted to ask the city attorney to bring to the commission a lease containing the terms that were within the term sheet to determine whether or not this commission could approve the final terms of what was being offered by Mr. Gross. There was no lease before us, and nowhere would I ever personally vote for a lease that was not in front of me. We did not have a lease. All we had was a term sheet. And at that time, there was also conversation with the police chief to determine what the real needs were, the amount of square footage, the security arrangements, access, the ability to be able to function on what hours that the landlord would allow the police department to continue to function at that site. There were many, many different questions out there. And most importantly, there was a question of taxes, whether or not there were back taxes that might be due because there was a concern whether or not this particular operation that was functioning before us was or was not subject to taxes, and whether the operation going forward, even as the city, would it be subject to taxation. If that were the case, the city's rent amount would be in excess of what was being proffered by Mr. Gross, because even in his own testimony, Mr. Gross indicated that taxes were a pass-through, and if he was responsible for any taxes, it would be passed through to the city, which would increase the amount per square footage on the rental space. So we did not. I'm just telling you what I felt my vote was for. My vote was to commit the term sheet to a lease, at which time the city commission would then vote one way or the other. The city did not vote on term sheets. I mean, it would have been irresponsible for the commission to think that it was voting a lease based on a few pieces of information on a term sheet, especially since there are a lot of outstanding items that still meant to be addressed. So I understand your objection, but I ask that the conversation and the testimony continue.
So understanding that, so let me respond to that, please. So understanding that, though, then there should be, again, one item before us, not two. So if you're understanding, and I thought my motion was pretty clear because I made it, and I made it with a high degree of specificity. I know what I'm saying when I say it, and I know what I meant when I said it, but you may not have understood my intent, and that's fine. So that being said, there should still only be one item in front of us tonight. It should be that final reduced to writing lease, which we've asked the city attorney's office to prepare. And so I don't know why there are two leases for consideration.
We asked because we asked, wait a minute, because we asked the city attorney to bring forth two leases, one for the 1515 West Cypress Creek Road and one for the 1901 West Cypress Creek Road. And I don't understand why you seem so focused on this commission not taking into consideration all the components that make up either lease, because we're trying to save money for the city of, I mean, this is a significant amount of money we're about to spend, and I would think you of all people would be very concerned about how much money we're going to spend, and at the same time trying to accommodate the needs of the police department. Those are the two most important factors I see here, and I feel that, you know, I don't want to be railroaded on this decision. We have an opportunity tonight to review everything and not to be forced into some corner because of some predilection to want to, you know, make this lease happen with Mr. Gross. We have an obligation more to the taxpayers than we do to Mr. Gross.
You're not under any obligation to do anything other than vote it up or vote it down. Mayor, if you don't like the lease, feel free to vote it down. But what I'm saying is it is inappropriate. You cannot make a direction that undoes a motion. Okay? You cannot have a conversation and a general, you know, freewheeling. I'm sorry, what was that? Commissioner Sturman, the hokey pokey, I believe you called it. So you can't have that conversation and change a motion that was adopted by the legislative body.
Okay, I disagree that was the motion, but anyway, Mr. Sturman, did you want to say something?
A hokey pokey, yes.
Okay.
No. Listen, here's the scenario that I was a little I think there's 2 meetings ago and then last meeting. Last meeting, in retrospect, I think we might have made a mistake. It's correct. 2 meetings ago, we had a motion to bring forth a lease. Wasn't in conference, wasn't a suggestion, wasn't direction for staff, wasn't a thought. It was a motion that was made, seconded, voted upon. And I guess, D. Wayne, I think that might have to ask you to weigh in at some particular point. But this is something that we had voted on to bring forth a lease. Last week, we had some issues we went forth. And in conference, we discussed the lease. No, we brought it on at the end as a walk-on, but we didn't take a vote. We didn't take any action. We just discussed maybe having 2 leases. And then when we went back and looked at it and realized the first one wasn't conference, was an actual motion that was passed. And so I think John is right. Commissioner Herbst is right. The motion was to bring forth a lease. Look at the lease. There's some things that that the mayor, excuse me, no disrespect, the mayor had brought forth, such as, the taxes, and that was the big issue with taxes and tax exempt status that we could address right now. But I think in light of the fact that we'd already brought the motion forward, seconded, and the motion was to bring forth the lease, we could look at the lease, address some of those issues that the mayor has, and vote it up and down. And if we voted down, then look at the options at this point. I mean, having 2 forward after we've already had a motion to bring forth a lease, John is right. I think that's what should be before us. Last time when you said we should bring 2 and compare them, I hadn't realized that we'd not actually voted on the motion, which it does change things. It's a different light that we're looking at it in.
Well, Mayor, if I may.
Yes, Commissioner.
Commissioner Sturman, it was no walk-on. You kept asking, where's the walk-on, which led me to believe you were expecting something, but there was no walk-on that night, so that's not correct.
Which means we did not vote that night.
Well,
That's correct.
Yes. I guess this could easily be discussed by the city attorney. I'd like to know, were there actual motions to approve a lease? I do not remember that. So let me speak as the one dissenting vote when we did vote to move forward with the 1515 building. It's not my recollection that we actually were voting to accept a lease that night, because as the mayor said, we didn't have a lease. How can you vote on a lease that you don't have? We did discuss the fact that there were terms. I was not comfortable with the terms, and I did not want to move forward. Again, I'd like to ask the city attorney and the city clerk, at the last meeting, what did we approve to get us to the point where actually staff went and requested the lease from each one? But I want you to know why I really objected to the process. Commissioner Herbst is very intent on process here and procedure. I objected and voted no when we decided to move forward with the 1515 building because I felt that the process was not being followed. There was only one party that was being given a chance over and over and over again to change their best and final offer. The deadline passed, they submitted, and then yet continually changed. So the one entity that the city manager and staff was moving forward to us for consideration on the 1901 building, was it 1901? 1901. That consideration was done. They were asked to bring specifics. They did, and then 3 of you decided you didn't want to go in that direction. So you didn't go in that direction, and you did not accept staff's recommendation. What was bothering me about that in the process was that the entity that was asked to present was never given a chance, like the 1515 building, to come back with another best and final. We were only offering one entity that constant attempt to come back and change the terms. I even see it tonight. Last time we saw there was a $120,000 security deposit for 1515. Look at that, miraculous, it's gone. That change is interesting change, but that's what we've been dealing with. We have not been giving both parties a fair and equitable attempt to come to us with a best and final. And that's what I'm concerned with. I want to make sure that our police have adequate space. I want to make sure it's a safe space. But I do not want to see the taxpayer have to shell out $500,000 more a year for the space. It could be 2 years, it could be 3 years. That is a significant amount of money. So I need a really good justification as to why we're going to spend and how we're going to justify to our constituents that we're spending an extra $500,000 more a year for 9,000 square feet of space. So I guess my question is to the city attorney and to the city clerk, what were those motions, or what what got us to this point now where all of a sudden staff went out, asked both sides, both entities for a lease, and that what did we pass at that last meeting, and what did we pass at the meeting when Commissioner Herbst says that we voted on a lease? I don't think we did, but can you help us understand that with some clarity? Thank you.
Certainly. So at the August 22nd meeting, a walk-on resolution was brought forward to adopt the lease for the 1901 building. In that CAM, staff provided a number of lease options demonstrating the due diligence that they took in identifying locations. Commissioner Herbst then made a motion for option B, subject to the review of the city attorney's office, including all representations made by representatives of the 1515 building that night. The commission voted on that 4-1.
But what was that actual wording of that motion? When you said he recommended option B, but is there wording there that says we're approving a lease like he is saying?
Option B, subject to the review of the city attorney's office, including all representations made that night.
Well, where's the wording that says we're approving a lease like we heard? Where is that wording?
So after the motion was made, the mayor, before calling the question on the vote, clarified the motion by stating that this will not be the final vote, but that they were asking legal staff to prepare a lease with the landlord based on the terms on page 2 of the CAM.
So asking staff to prepare a lease with terms for the 1515 building. So let me ask you, City Attorney, do you believe that we passed a motion to move forward with a lease for the 1515 building at that meeting?
I believe that that the commission passed a motion accepting the offer for option B and directing our office to draft a lease according to that option and the representations made that night.
So if we didn't even have a lease, then we couldn't have moved to accept a lease?
You did not vote on the terms of a lease that night.
Thank you.
You voted on the terms that were presented
correct
in the CAM as option B and
yes.
the representations made by the representative.
Yes, that is my recollection, that we did not vote on the lease. So now, how did we get to this meeting? How did we all of a sudden now ask for and have in front of us leases and very detailed term sheets for both entities, 1901 and 1515? Sure. What did we pass at that meeting that got us here today?
So, towards the end of the September 5th meeting, Commissioner Sturman inquired about a walk-on item with regards to the leasing of the 1515 property. The commission began a discussion with regards to that, and I believe the mayor had suggested reviewing both leases. Then Commissioner Sturman stated, yes, bring back the other lease on September 13th, bring back the lease for 1515 along with the other lease.
So hold on. So Commissioner Sturman asked to see 2 leases.
That is correct.
Okay, keep going. Thank you.
And then the mayor stated on the record, then we have direction from the majority of the commission to bring back both leases for September 13th.
Thank you. So that makes it very clear to me, and I hope it makes it clear to everyone. So, City Attorney, do you feel that right now us dealing with the agenda item as presented with the 2 leases and for us to discuss them, do you think that everything is copacetic and we're not violating any procedure?
I think that the action taken at this August 22nd meeting still stands with regards to the acceptance of the offer and the direction that was provided to our office, and that there needs to be an action to address that action, whether it's rescinding or reconsidering that motion, if the commission decides to change directions and move forward with the alternative lease.
Well, then the question that comes to mind is why you didn't say that at that last meeting. Why are you telling us that now?
Well, wait a minute. Let me just say something here. We can move forward and discuss the lease on 1515, right? I don't know what the terms are because they keep changing every day. So maybe we can discuss 1515. There's a lease in front of us. If the commission decides to accept it, they'll vote for it.
I'd like some clarification on how I should interact with the direction that the commission provides.
Okay.
So with regards to, I thought I was clear on bringing back the lease, and I didn't know what the direction was with regards to the commission and bringing back the lease for 1901. I would have advised you with regards to the ability to just adopt it without taking action on the prior motion ahead of time. So it's increasingly difficult to kind of figure out, I have 5 bosses up here, so it's increasingly difficult to get a clear understanding of the direction that the commission wants, particularly when individuals, think that they're voting on something other than what they're voting on.
Here's my thought. You have one motion and then you have one direction. And the motion has to be, you have to act on that motion. The mayor had suggested that we bring 2 proposals ahead, and it seemed reasonable at the time. So we have 2 proposals here. But we still have an open-ended item with 1515. My thought is we have them both here. They're both ready. I think we have to look at 1515 first. That's an open-ended item. Make a decision on that. And if we decide to go with it, end of story. You only open up the other one. You have to close the 1515. Either vote it up, vote it down, and make a decision on that. That should be the first thing we do right now. And if we decide to go with it, end of story.
Okay, let's do that then.
Mayor, before we do that, could I ask the city attorney a question? So, Dwayne, for those of my colleagues up here who haven't had a law class during their college career, could you explain offer and acceptance, contract law 101?
Sure. And in order to make a binding legal contract, one party must provide an offer, and once it is accepted by the other party, that there is a binding agreement. However, Commissioner, when you're dealing with real estate also, there is a statute of frauds which requires that those agreements be reduced to writing, particularly with regards to the encumbrance of real estate over a year.
Over a year, certain dollar amount, contracts for real estate. There are 5, if I remember correctly, 5 conditions that need to be reduced to the form of writing. Hence my motion that the city attorney's office reduce this to writing and bring it back at a later time. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, so based on Commissioner Sturman's suggestion, we'll go over the lease regarding 1515 West Cypress Creek Road. Mr. Spence, do you want to tell us what is the latest on 1515 West Cypress Creek Road? What are the terms being offered?
If I can ask Angela Solomon. Is Angela? Yeah.
Angela?
And is Mr. Gross in the audience? I didn't even.
Well, I'm sure he is.
Oh, I didn't even see you guys there. Okay.
I'm sure he is.
So you have the lease that's a part of your backup, but this item still remains fluid. I think yesterday we received.
Hi, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners, Angela Salmon, City Manager's Office. Mr. Spence is correct. We received an email just yesterday, Tuesday, at 4 p.m. in regards to the proportionate share of taxes, and I asked Mr. Gross to be prepared to speak on that, and that's the latest.
So we can go over what's attached to the item. I just want you to be aware that whatever those terms are, I didn't want to necessarily waste the commission's time going over what's attached for your approval on the item versus what's Mr. Gross proposed yesterday evening with regards to changes to the lease.
Well, wait.
Is it changes again to the lease that we already have in our backup that we've studied? There's more changes as of yesterday?
That's correct.
Okay.
All right, before we go there, Chief, could you come up to the microphone for a second? Because this, too, becomes a moving target. Chief, originally, when requested how many square feet we needed in order to accommodate the temporary headquarters for the police station, you had sent an email to the city manager indicating a certain square footage. And could you please tell us what that amount was, and has that amount changed?
Well, good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. First of all, that amount was based on the direction that we were given was to maximize the number of people who would be working from home at that time. So that number was based upon people working from home and not everybody being back. Now, it's my understanding that the goal is to have everybody working in one location again, and so that's why the number has changed. And certainly our preference is to have as many people working in one place as possible.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to clarify that. That was never given as a direction for having people working from home. I want to just clarify that. That was never given as a direction to the chief. The chief volunteered a number, and that's the number that we work with. In fact, that number was given to Susan, and that's the number that we use, 30,000. But we do have a new number that the chief produced today, which is 45,000 square feet.
45,000.
Yes.
What was the original number?
31,520.
30,000.
I'm looking at the email right now.
What is it? 30,000.
31,520 is what the chief wrote to Susan Grant on July 28th, 2023.
And now it's 45,000.
I don't know what it is now. It changes every day.
Is that what you said, Chief? 45,000.
And if I may, regarding
Yes.
the square footage,
Yes, sir.
throughout this process, we've been given directions to go look at various locations, move left, move right. We've considered a number of facilities, and I think the emphasis is placed on square footage, which is not, it's only one consideration. From our perspective, it's the configuration of the building, it's the accessibility of the building, it's essentially the functionality of the building. So a 100,000 square foot warehouse isn't going to help us.
Right.
But when you have a facility like the Kaplan facility that's ready to go and move and ready, that accommodates our operational needs to the extent possible, that makes a difference.
And 1901 is not move-in ready?
1901 doesn't compare to the Kaplan building from our operational standpoint. It's on a sixth floor. We have no first floor access. The first floor at Kaplan is
Wait a minute. You have
ideal
no
for
first
public.
floor access. How do you get into the sixth floor if you don't have first
We have
floor
no
access?
first floor presence for the public to come into the building.
I
They had
see.
to come up and go to the sixth floor. There's a whole list of issues with that building, why we prefer Kaplan over the 1901 building. Having people on the sixth floor respond to an emergency is problematic. The classroom configurations, the office configurations, the ingress, the egress, the interview rooms, the space for our property, the space for our IT people, the space for our investigators is completely, we're not comparing apples to apples when you look at just the square footage.
Okay.
Chief, can I ask a question about that? So it's kind of occurred to me when I was having a tour of your existing building the other day, and we were just talking about the fact that, you know, if you had to have all of your officers respond to an emergency, are they going to be like waiting at the elevator, going down in groups of 5? Are they going to charge down a staircase? How do you get out of the sixth floor?
In the 1901 building, yes,
Yeah.
that would be a problem.
Okay.
And how many officers, I'm just curious, I always thought the police were on the street and in their cars. I didn't realize that everyone's just sitting in an office. Is that true?
No, that's not correct that everyone's sitting in the office. We have about 198 positions that are on the list that I sent to the city manager this afternoon who do have office space. That doesn't include many of our operations people. So we probably have about 310 people displaced in the 21 different locations around the county now, and management of that is becoming problematic.
I have a question because we did see an agenda item where staff was recommending the 1901 building to us. Just curious, because I'm sure staff doesn't operate in a vacuum, but when we got that document, what was the date of that, August 20th or?
That was August 22nd. That was a
August
walk-on.
22nd. Staff came forward with a recommendation for 1901. So, Chief, were you part of any of the discussions with staff? I mean, tonight you're telling us Kaplan, but staff did not recommend Kaplan when it came to us on August 22nd. Were you part of the discussions with staff? I mean, I still do consider you staff. Were you asked then what your opinion was? Were you involved in discussions? Did you tour with anyone, the two buildings, the options? Where were you for those discussions?
That's not the complete story.
Okay.
The reason we recommended 1901 is because we were told Kaplan was not going to happen, that we couldn't consider Kaplan. So
Oh,
we
wait.
were-
So you did recommend 1901?
Yes, because we looked at 3 other buildings, all of them on Cypress. 2 of them that we looked at we thought really aren't going to work. Of those 2 that we were allowed to consider, 1901 was best, only because we were not allowed to consider Kaplan.
Why?
That was the direction we had from the city manager.
Why?
It's not that it wasn't allowed. Okay, we were just fulfilling our due diligence. In fact, I want to say for the record, I've been working on this since July. My vacation was killed because I was going back and forth and attempting to resolve this, and I actually wanted to do a 1-year lease of $47,000 because I had the authority to do that, and then bring it back to get the 2nd year, but that didn't work. We're at the same spot today. However, the proposals that we were receiving had clear restrictions that even on August 22nd, we received the final proposal, the best and final offer, with those restrictions. And because those restrictions were there, and because it did not allow the chief of police to operate in the manner that he has to operate, which is with all the flexibility, with no restrictions on access, and that is why that wasn't recommended from our level. We wanted to make sure that he had the space that was adequate to his operations with all the flexibilities possible. So that is what took place. But yes, we were looking at Kaplan from the very beginning, and upon doing our due diligence and looking at even other buildings, because that was the only space at that time that we had a 3-year lease for, that's the one that the Kaplan building was the one that we were bringing forward. But after doing our due diligence, we did find, or the chief did say, that the 1901 was another building that he could operate from. And that is what took place.
So you left the idea of the Kaplan building, which was your first direction, only because of restrictions being put on us as a city by the landlord, and also the fact that they just couldn't accommodate what it was that we needed?
We took another action for another building, or recommended another building, because number one, the restrictions. Also, we were advised that Kaplan themselves had an issue with police operating out of the building. We have that in writing. We also had a 3-year lease before us. That was the best that could be done at that time. And we just were completely...
Best meaning what, shortest? What do you mean by best?
Yes.
Shortest, correct? I mean, we know, but for the audience, you mean shortest, right?
3-year was the minimum.
And we wanted 2.
We wanted to bring forward the best possible deal for the city, for the taxpayers.
Was there any other issue besides the 3 years, and also the fact that they didn't want the police in the building?
Right now, Commissioner, I mean, I don't recall, but I mean, I'm just thinking the back and forths. They were extensive, I will say, and so at the end, because of the uncertainty that the Kaplan building had at the time, that is why we presented on the 22nd as a walk-on, because we're in dire need of getting space for the police department.
So is it fair to say that deadlines kept coming and going? We weren't getting the accommodation that we needed in a timely manner. Meanwhile, at the same time, we are anxious and desperately trying to get the police into a structure, and yet the fact that we could not get in a timely manner also to meet the deadlines that were imposed, that information, you then searched beyond 1515, known as the Kaplan building, and you went to an alternative.
Part of our due diligence is to look at least 2 other spaces so that we could at least bring to you a best product that has comparables, and at least you can see the values in those spaces. But yes, every step of the way we looked at those, and it's not that you were not allowed, Chief. It's just that we were not allowed because of the restrictions that were before us, and that is why on August 22nd, we produced the 1901 as a walk-on, because we desperately need space for the police department.
So it was almost a moot point. I'd like to hear, Mayor, some more information, because after the last meeting, and I heard that all of you reached out to the property appraiser's office, I felt kind of left out.
We'll get to that point.
Okay, we'll get to that point.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
I have a lot more questions, but I'm fine with whatever direction you want to go in.
All right.
So, Mayor, before we get into that, I actually have something I'd like to add to all that. So there's a whole lot of discussion about how we got to the point we're at. And frankly, it's irrelevant. Okay? I don't care what conversations were had up until this point. We have a lease in front of us. Voted up or voted down. How we got here, conversations between the city manager and the chief and the manager and Mr. Gross and anybody else is frankly irrelevant, okay? That has nothing to do with what we have in front of us.
Okay.
And I would disagree.
I happen to. I mean, I was biting my tongue here, and I wasn't going to say anything, but John, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, all this stuff in the past, we have something in front of us to deal with. How we got here. I mean, he's blaming him. He's blaming. I don't care. We need to get you a police station that you need.
But we're trying to. We have the police chief here. We're trying to decide what the needs are, and I think that we're making progress here. So just be a little patient, all right? Chief, I see that you said that you only had access to the 6th floor in 1901, yet the term sheet that I have in front of me shows that the 37,000 square feet shows space on the 1st floor, the 5th floor, and the 6th floor. What is your understanding of that?
That's something that we haven't seen.
You haven't seen that?
We've only seen one floor.
Okay. So so the term sheet that talks about space.
And if I may, Mayor, spreading people out over multiple floors like that, I don't know what the square footage is at each floor or what the accommodations are in each floor. So that's why I say we have to be careful with the debate about the square footage.
But 1515 has you on 2 different floors too.
2 floors, correct.
Yeah. So if you have it, so here you have it on. You have a combination of floors depending upon your need. Okay. So, but the 1st floor, you had indicated that you couldn't have access from the 1st floor,
no,
and there is space on the 1st floor.
What I'm saying is, what was presented to us when I toured the facility 2 or 3 times, I'm not sure. There was no public lobby for the police department on the 1st floor. A person, including a prisoner, would have to be brought through either the public lobby in handcuffs and brought up to the 6th floor, or the person would have to come through a side door and be brought past the building's break room and essentially like a community room for the entire building in handcuffs, which is problematic for us either way. There's also no, as I mentioned, public lobby where a person needs a copy of a report. There isn't there. They had to come in, be greeted by someone from the building, and then brought up to the 6th floor.
So are you saying that in 1515 you can come through the front door there?
At 1515, the public can walk into the lobby. There's a lobby right there with the reception desk right there, which will be staffed by our people. Our records people will be right behind that to provide copies of reports or have a report made for a person. If we have to bring a prisoner in, we have 2 choices. We can bring them in from the east side or the west side. They would walk in a door and almost literally walk into an immediately adjacent interview room on either side of the building.
So
for
clarification
us, operationally,
on that
that's ideal.
Chief. They have a special restriction at 1515 with regards to not allowing us to have holding cells for suspects. So
Correct.
That's different than interviewing.
Correct. We have a holding cell at the police station now. That's a very different thing.
But 1515 does not provide for a holding cell capacity. Is that what you're saying, Dwayne?
It's explicitly prohibited. There will be no holding areas for suspects on the property and no jailing capacity.
On the property or just the 1st floor?
On the property.
Well, so what are we talking about?
That's 2 different things. A holding cell is you bring a prisoner there, they're processed, they're fingerprinted, photographed, and they're left there to be taken to the county jail. If you bring a suspect into an interview room, they're escorted in, and then they're escorted out. They don't stay there very long.
Okay. All right.
Do we have any restrictions like that, Dwayne, on the 1919 building?
1901.
I'm sorry, 1901?
No, we don't have any of those restrictions anymore on 1901.
Okay.
Anymore, correct.
Because they were probably able to also give a best and final.
Okay. Anyone have any other questions of the police chief?
Yes, a few.
Yes, please go ahead.
It's going to be a while. Please take. First of all, for the record, I want to say this public. I want to thank both of you guys. I want to thank Greg, number one. I mean, he's getting a lot of flack for this, but Greg, when we found out there was mold, we met on a Thursday. I spoke to you 2 days later. By Sunday, you made a decision. What was that decision?
Where was the mold?
No, Greg will answer.
We evacuated
In 2 days, right?
In a series of days, yes.
Okay, it wasn't mandated. We didn't have testing, but in the abundance of caution, you made the decision to get us out of there in 2 days.
Before the tests were available.
Before you even had testing, because you put the. I think that's important to know. I mean, sometimes the city manager gets a lot of heat for a lot of things. We're in this bind because Greg made the decision to put the safety and welfare of the police officers first, and that's why we're here, and that's why we're in a bit of a bind. But it's not. And I want to applaud you for doing that. Number two.
Why are you dwelling on the past?
Steve, please. I'm not in a mood.
Okay. Just wondering. I just want us to be straight up.
I have the floor, Steve.
Go right ahead.
When I'm done, you could talk.
Go right ahead. I thought we had to move
please,
forward.
Steve. When I'm done,
go ahead.
You could talk.
I just like consistency.
Steve,
go ahead.
Okay, Smith City Police Chief. I want to, again, thank you tremendously for your willing to be flexible, deal with us. We've met numerous times, correct?
Yes.
We've taken tours of numerous facilities. We've looked at the old facility. I've looked at what we call the hut. Over and over again, I think the feedback I've gotten from you is we will make do with whatever we need to do. Whatever facility we would have, if it was 27,000, the feedback I got from you is, well, if that's what we have, we will do the best. If we have 40,000, that's what we have to do the best. It's not that you wanted 27,000, but that was what seemed to be what was before us. I don't want you making do. 1.3 million, is that the number, Greg, for West Marine?
What's that?
1.3 million a year.
It's 1.4.
For West Marine.
No, I'm sorry.
No. I'm making a point here. West Marine.
Angela, I need you to validate that, please. The West Marine lease.
Yes.
For the first and second floor,
You're
32,000
For
square feet.
chambers.
Approximately
For chambers.
Approximately
Right.
1.4 million.
Now, 1.4 million is what the. Okay, that's all. Thank you. 1.4 million would give us 47,000 square feet, give or take, in Kaplan, correct?
Not necessarily, because there's triple net, and there may be additional monies due for taxes.
Without taxes. It's a ballpark. Well, the point is they're asking for the same amount as chambers as for our entire police force 24/7 to prepare us. Hurricane ready, how important is that?
For us, it's very important. It's good
Okay,
to know that
hurricane rated. We get hit by a hurricane and you can't operate. Now, the people that we need to serve us can't even serve themselves, correct?
Right.
They were talking about 6th, 7th floor, several floors. How important is it for you to have generator backup?
Also very important.
Okay, Mr. Gross, could you come up for a second?
Is there a representative for 1901 here tonight?
Yes, up there.
Can you come up forward also?
No, please come up forward too. Thank you so much. Here, take your time. I don't want you to hurt yourself. Yeah, thank you for coming up. Your building, is it generator backup?
We have a generator that will run for 7 days,
Okay.
5,000 gallons of diesel fuel, 1.5 megawatt generator.
Now, this is just the first floor.
No,
This is just the second floor.
no,
This is the third floor.
no.
Is this for the whole piece of property that they're
The
looking to
entire
rent?
building,
Okay.
the elevators, the HVAC, all electrical
Well,
connections.
for the 47,000 square feet, it's all back up, right?
The 99,000 square feet,
Okay.
the entire building is
Okay.
backed up by this generator.
Okay, 1901. I believe yours is only one floor has generator. Is that correct? Not the whole building?
So we have a building generator that controls all 6 floors, but that's for emergency lights, elevator operations. The 6th floor in particular does have a brand new generator that does control all elements of the space, and we clearly outlined that in the proposal.
And that's like about 25,000. But for the expanded space, the other 9,000, it would not.
As I outlined in the proposal, again, I did not know. I want to answer your question directly. We never spoke about the 5th floor, but I'm going to answer your question specifically. The 6th floor has a new generator, brand new generator, that controls all elements of the 6th floor, AC, lighting, all of it. The building, in addition to that, has a building generator, like I said, that controls the elevator, lighting, but I don't believe the AC.
Okay. Mr. the Chief, are you still here? I didn't think you'd be too far. There's other issues like covered parking, access. You mentioned the forward-looking area. I've toured both buildings several times, actually, looking at the configuration, how public would come in. How are all those things important to you?
Yes,
Okay, you could make either one work if you had to, correct?
correct.
But you have a preference.
I do.
Okay. Guys, I don't want them making do. We need to give them the tools that they need to operate, and that's why we voted 2 weeks ago to bring this forward. If the numbers are okay, the issues with the taxes, if that's worked out, I stand by my vote 2 weeks ago. So I'm going to go ahead and yield. Steve, you could say whatever you want right now.
No, I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that I heard that we're okay regarding generator backup. I know you mentioned hurricane preparedness or hurricane ready, but I think in the 20-year-old building, I'm not sure if that's hurricane ready for 2023 or the current standards of hurricane ready.
What does hurricane ready mean?
Exactly. That was my next question, actually, because I keep hearing that about being hurricane ready.
If you wouldn't mind, I can bring up some information on the screen that will explain everything to you. If you
No, that's okay. Is it rated for a Category 5 hurricane, today's standard?
It's rated for winds in excess of 120 miles an hour.
So that's not a hurricane Category 5. That's about a 3.
Well, let me suggest, if you allow me to finish, please.
Sure.
Okay. The rating at the time the building was built had ratings in excess of 120 mile an hour wind for construction, structure, and windows and doors. This was just recently inspected again in May and June, and we have a certification to those numbers. Keeping in mind that 120 mile an hour wind is not being tested for beyond the 120 mile an hour wind. It may work at 150 mile an hour wind. The Miami-Dade code requires in excess of 120 mile an hour winds. And it also should be noted that FEMA deems police stations a critical facility. And as part of being a critical facility, it should be in a building that has impact glass, backup generators, and a structure that will withstand winds in excess of 120 miles an hour. And I think I shared that with you in an email on Friday. I gave you all the details in the attachment. So I would like to address that. And I would like to also address one other point. The reason why there was a change yesterday in the lease, and it was only a proposed change for a clarification, we got a call from Ms. Solomon yesterday saying there was an issue as to whether if the taxes were for just one building, what would the proration be? If it was for the entire property, what would the proration be? And Ms. Solomon asked me to make the clarification, which I did, and I sent it to Angela and to Ms. Solomon yesterday at 4 o'clock. That is accurate. But it was only because of a request to make for a clarification and the allocation percentage that would be allocated to a property-wide expense versus a building expense.
So what was the allocation for the amount of space that the city is looking to occupy?
If the expense is dedicated to the 1515 building only, it's 48%. If the expense is dedicated to the entire property, and I'll give you an example, insurance is not broken down by building. Landscaping is not broken down by building. That would be an allocation of 24%, 50% of that.
So if it's determined that there is taxes due on the building, real estate taxes, you're saying that the city's portion would be 50% of that bill on that building?
If the taxes are only allocated to the 1515 building.
Correct. That's all we're only talking about the 1515 building, right?
But keep in mind it's a 12-acre campus.
Right.
And there's two folios for the property. There's a 1515 folio and there's a 1525 folio.
Okay.
So if the taxes are allocated to the 1515 folio, then it would be allocated at 48%. If it's allocated to the entire property, it would be allocated at 24%.
So do we have any idea how much that would be?
I have no idea, Mr. Mayor. With all due respect, we bought the property in 2019. We had the exemption in place when we bought the property.
Right.
We did all the due diligence to find out the exemption was there. Today, I went on the website again, and the exemption is still in place.
Right, but we have information now that going forward, it's a possibility that there could be taxes due now on the building, the value of the building.
I'd like to address that if you wouldn't mind.
I'm sorry?
I would like to address that if you wouldn't mind. I apologize.
It's okay.
In the lease, we put a provision in there that the city would not be obligated for any taxes before January 1, 2024.
Right.
It is directly in the lease. That addressed the issue that you raised previously about past responsibilities.
Right.
There are none. And as far as taxes on a go-forward basis, I did speak to the property appraiser this afternoon. It's still an ongoing issue as to whether we are susceptible to the tax or that the tax is not applicable to us. I'm not sure when that will be resolved.
Well, I know it's going to be resolved before January 1st of 2024. And my concern is that whatever the per square foot rate is, you also have on your term sheet triple net. And that really concerns me. And we'll ask, there's a representative tonight from the property appraiser's office who might give us a little more specific direction on what that possible exposure might be. But my concern is because you had indicated that that's a pass-through, whatever per square foot amount that we're talking about would be increased significantly by the fact that taxes would be due on the real estate. And if we're paying for half the taxes on the building, that could be a significant amount of money.
I have no means of determining what that tax would be. I could tell you that just trying to benchmark it, 1901 is 141,000 square feet, and their tax is $2.50, I believe, per square foot. So our building is 99,000 square feet. It's less. So I'm assuming that it'll either be somewhere around $2 to $2.50 a square foot, but it's only speculation on my part.
Yeah, well, maybe the representative from the property appraiser's office can give us some direction. Okay.
But Mayor, what is that math? About $300,000 a year for the taxes?
If it's, I wasn't doing
Maybe
that
Susan or someone figured it out, but if we are responsible for 50% going forward from January 1, if the taxes are roughly $300,000, that's quick math, and I'm not good at math, but
you're an English teacher.
Thank you. That's 100. Is that we're talking about?
So if it's $150,000, that's attributable to the city's portion. That would be about $14,000 per month extra in rent, on top of whatever we're being charged. We would be charged now. So
correct.
So if the first year's rent, according to this term sheet, is $1,475,000, so we're looking at another 150, so it would bring it up to almost $1,600,000.
A little bit more.
A little bit more.
Yes.
Okay.
I would like to address one other point too, please.
Please go ahead.
And I did address this in the email that was sent to you and to Commissioner Glassman on Friday. We were given a best and final offer request to be delivered on August 21st by 5 p.m. That is the same proposal that existed previously. We got a call on Tuesday morning from Colliers saying that they would like us to clarify what the nomenclature that was in sections A, B, and C, and clarify the way it was written. And we did clarify that. It wasn't that the proposal changed. It was only for clarifications.
So, but Mr. Gross, I want to be honest with you. Look, I'm trying to find a path to make a deal here, okay? But it's just, we're finding all these things that keep changing, and it's not all in the favor of the city, and so so just bear with us. We're trying to figure our way through this, okay? But in the bottom line is we want to find a space that's best suits the needs of the police department. That's number one. Number two, that protects the police personnel while operating there. And number three, what's the least cost to the taxpayers in order to try to accommodate that need? To me, those are the three things that are important to me. So,
and I agree with you. They're also important to me, and particularly the first two. 1515 is the right space for the police department.
Okay.
So,
all right,
thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Commissioner
Sturman had asked Mr. Gross to come up. So,
yes.
Commissioner Sturman, have you concluded your remarks?
Oh yeah, don't go, well, in case we need to have you come back, but for the moment, yes. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Vice Mayor hasn't had a chance to speak tonight.
Yes, thank you. Chief, are you still close? My questions regarding the buildings that are under consideration. CJNet, FCIC, NCIC, just for protection of the officers, which building better suits regulations and requirements for our police agency to be able to work properly under those guidelines?
Well, from our perspective, and
Yes.
that's another issue that goes to, it's not just a square footage
Mm-hmm.
assessment, it's an operational assessment.
Mm-hmm.
We feel Kaplan would be best suited for that.
Okay.
And for the CJIS issues too.
Okay. Also, I wanted to know when the 1901 building, I did tour 3 of those buildings in the 1901 building, recalling, as you pointed out, if necessary, bringing those who are being interviewed past a open common area. And is that truly a concern for you when you're bringing prisoners through that type of area?
It is a concern, and I don't think it's appropriate. Essentially, you would be parading someone through a public lobby of some sort, and I don't think that's appropriate to do to a person.
Okay, thank you.
Did you want to comment on that? Please step up to the microphone.
So, with all due respect, Commissioner, that's absolutely not true. We have a service entrance, and you can go directly to the service elevator without bypassing any common area whatsoever. And this was misrepresented at last meetings, too.
Wait, stay there. Stay there.
When I was there, I didn't see that particular space. When I toured, I didn't see that space because I asked about the space.
Sure. So, at that meeting, Colliers told me that we're looking for 25 to 26,000 square feet, and we never spoke about additional space. All these things happen in real time, and I got to learn more what the requirements are, and everybody at the same time was learning what the requirements really are. So at the time that we toured, I had no idea about needing an interrogation room or things of that nature.
So I wanted to clarify one point that I made earlier with regards to 1901. They do have the same requirements, just that the one provision that I read from is not in their lease, but the restrictions are in another portion of their lease. So for the record, it is the same restrictions.
Restrictions in what way?
With regards to there shall not be holding cells, jail detention center, booking stations, or a precinct in the facility.
Okay. Does your lease provide for space on the first floor of your building?
In the last draft, yes.
And how much are we talking about?
So it's going to be 2,000 square feet on the first floor, but yes, you are correct. But I understand. I'm speaking about my own lease, but what I heard both leases do have in common, and again, speaking about my own, yes, that there's not going to be, the use for a holding cell is prohibited, but the interrogation room is allowed, and that room is going to be specifically designated right off the service entrance to conduct interrogations.
So when you walk in your building, is that a common reception area for the whole building? Tell me the configuration.
Sure. So there's a service entrance in the back. You open up 2 double doors straight to an interrogation room. You walk another 10 feet. You're going to have your common area to the left-hand side. That has drywall. You cannot see. There's a door to get into the common area, but you don't have to go into a common area to get to the service elevator. You walk through the service entrance straight to the service elevator. That's designated specifically for the police department.
Okay, so if someone comes into the police department, not as a suspect, but a member of the public who wants a record or wants some information, how does that work in your building?
2 other entrances, and there's a reception desk and 2 other elevators to go up to the 6th and or 5th floor.
So your term sheet talks about the 5th floor as well. How many square feet is on the 5th floor?
9,400 roughly.
9,400?
Correct.
So the lion's share of your lease is on the 6th floor then?
Correct.
And do you know approximately how much is on the 6th floor?
Sure. It's roughly 26,000 square feet, 25,775 to be exact.
Who are we sharing space with on the 5th floor?
There's going to be 2 other tenants on the 5th floor.
2 other tenants that are not adverse to police activity?
No, and I verified with other tenants in the building as well, tenants that have more sizable square footage, and they said very happy to have police presence at the building.
And who's on the first floor other than the outside of the 2,000 square feet?
3 more tenants.
3 other tenants?
Correct.
Okay. And your parking situation, could you tell me, do you have a parking on site?
Correct.
Okay. Is it covered parking? Is it a parking garage?
We have
or-
roughly, no, so we have 15 parking spaces that are covered. The rest of it is open parking, but as discussed in previous meetings, I'm happy to put on the security gate, but it's not covered parking.
Okay. So it's just an open parking lot, surface parking.
We have security from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., as discussed before, and they patrol the area, but it's not covered parking.
Okay. And with regard to taxes, this per square foot amount that you have on the term sheet, is that inclusive of real estate taxes on the building?
Correct.
So there's no additional taxes that we would.
$357,000 was last year's tax bill. My trim notice just came in. It's going to be roughly the same amount, maybe 365, 370.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Before you
Vice
leave,
Mayor, yes.
I'm sorry. The building, hurricane compliant?
So it's a bit of a big question, if you don't mind me saying. So I sent in the last draft, and apparently, again, I'm cautious on everybody's time, and I thought that we sent in the draft on Monday, and the commissioners and everyone's going to have a chance to review that. We sent in a 30-year milestone report done by Kimley Horn. We passed all necessary criteria, and we don't have impact windows. The building itself, as outlined in the report, is safe, sound, but we don't have impact windows.
What's the rating?
I don't believe that they designate a specific rating. They just, in the very first page of their report, essentially it's a clean bill of health. Everything is structurally safe and sound, and it can withstand. Look, the building's been around since 1987, and there was never an incident that went through Andrew, and the building is still here.
We spoke when I toured. We talked about the generators, and you said again that definitely the sixth floor has its independent or the generator
Correct.
that is solely operating the
Correct.
sixth floor.
Correct.
The other floors, the generator that's assigned to it, what is the how many days will it operate?
Sure. So on the sixth floor, as outlined in the proposal, can run for roughly 7 days without power. It's a very, very, very strong generator. As a matter of fact, now that I learned that there might be a need for additional space, we can integrate the sixth floor generator to provide power for the fifth floor as well.
So how much currently before you generate for the other floors? The generator that is in place now, how many days will it? 7 for
Roughly
both
7
floors.
days.
Okay. And that's the elevator.
The elevator is run by an additional generator that the building has, as we spoke about before, that controls the building. The sixth floor is just to control the elements inside the sixth floor. So you essentially have a double generator.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When was the last time you used the generators?
For the building?
Uh-huh.
I'll have to ask my engineer. I don't want to say something that I don't know.
Like in the last 5 years?
Well, he doesn't know.
Okay.
FPL does some tests sometimes where they
Okay.
cut off power to the building that we need to utilize the generator. But
When's the last time the building was hit by a hurricane?
I mean, last year we had some issues with, again, hurricane. We had tropical storms or whatever it was, and the worst thing I had to do was pay my landscaper some additional money, but besides that, nothing.
Okay. And you're west of I-95?
Correct.
Which is not a hurricane evacuation zone.
And we spoke about the FEMA rating multiple times. I don't want to waste valuable times from all the esteemed people sitting here.
Thank you.
You're not wasting our time. So any information you have is important to us.
Thank you.
So I do have a point to make here, and this is not directed at you. I actually understand that negotiation is an iterative process, and every time we move forward, there are more terms that come out. So this is not directed at you, but I'll just say this in general. So wait, all the terms are changing again at the last minute here? Like we're getting new ideas coming forward? Like how could we accept that, Mayor, Commissioners? No, that was sarcasm.
Is that being
I'm being
sarcastic?
facetious, yes. So I just want to get the point across that this is how this works. Okay, this is how it worked. Every time we negotiate a lease, there are terms that go back and forth till we get to the final version of it. And I don't find that problematic.
Right.
That's how this works. I get that. Not everybody does.
This is what I find problematic. So D. Wayne Spence wrote to me on Monday, September 4th, in response to a memorandum I had said with several questions. And his second paragraph says, once the corrections are provided, I can provide an updated memorandum. But that was because he said that we had gotten some bad information from Colliers. He says, but as of now, it appears that an opportunity to provide a best and final offer was provided to Cypress West LLC without a disclosure or opportunity to provide a best and final offer to Cypress Corporate Center, LLC. And that's what I'm talking about. I just want both entities to be treated equally. If someone's going to always be able to change the terms, if someone's always going to be able to give a new best and final after a deadline, I want the other entity to have that same opportunity. And Mr. Spence has written to me that that opportunity was not provided. That's all. Thanks, Mayor.
Commissioner, if I may answer your question. So, again, the narrative that I understand, okay, I didn't look for you. You guys looked for me. So Colliers came to me that the city of Fort Lauderdale has a requirement. I put in a lot of time and a lot of work, and honestly, the way you directed this, I feel like I'm sort of outsider. I came to the meeting August 22nd after answering every single question that was brought to me. Proof of what I'm saying. So we were talking about all these lofty concepts. At last meeting, 1515. Is impact, not impact, what's a hurricane? I provided backup in paper before it even was asked for me to verify every element of my building. When I came to the August 22nd meeting, what was relayed to me, respectfully, just what I know,
Sure.
that there was one lease in question, the city attorney's office approved that lease, and this is a mere formality. And I, honestly, my main objective is to accommodate the police. And I was trying to help, and I feel like, you know, like what is not, why is 1901 even being here? Like, you know, the city was looking for space, and I tried to do everything, and the way you're looking at my property honestly doesn't feel well.
So I appreciate that, and that's why I preface it. So you have dealt with us in good faith, and I appreciate that. Again, my reticence has nothing to do with you, your business. You're one of my constituents. You're on property in my district. I want to see you be successful also. That's why I suggested that we take some of our admin staff out of the 1 East Broward building, where we're paying significantly more, and move them up there. I would love to fill your building up. I genuinely want to see you be as successful as we possibly can. I want everybody in Uptown I want to create Uptown as a second business district for the city. Not just a downtown, but Uptown. We've been working on this plan for well over a decade. And in order for Uptown to be successful, everybody has to participate and have an opportunity. And so nothing that I'm saying, please don't take it as a denigration of your building or anything else. So it's not that. It's my feeling that this building better suits the use that we're going to put it for our police department. It's that and nothing else. I happen to think it's a better suited for that. And again, I would love to move city staff up there. I think it's a great idea. I'd love to bring them up there. And if you can talk to my colleagues over there and get them to go along with me and save us millions of dollars a year by moving up to that building, I would happily endorse. I'd make that motion in a heartbeat.
Okay.
So again, you've dealt with us in good faith, and that's why I said, I understand negotiation is an iterative process, and I expect that. In fact, I appreciate it because I think we get to a better deal when we do that. Same thing we do in collective bargaining. We don't sit down in one session and knock all this stuff out. We've been in collective bargaining for 2 years with our fire union. Every time we come back, guess what? We're still working on other little pieces of the deal. So that's how this is done. I get that, and I'm not offended by the process. I understand that that's integral to how we get deals done.
Okay, thank you, sir. Can I ask Mila Schwarzreich to come to the podium? Mila is the general counsel for the Property Appraiser's Office. I asked her to come here, and I appreciate your taking time out of your personal life to come here. Thank you, Mila. No, you were on.
Before. Good evening.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I also have Kelly Brown, who's the director of our exemptions department. Hello, everybody.
So can you give us a little bit of an update on 1515 and what can we expect as a tenant if we were to move in there? What would be the tax situation? Is the building subject to taxation? The land subject to tax? What can we expect?
So at this point, we are evaluating to determine whether the ownership structure and then the use would be consistent with the exemption requirements. We're working very diligently. Your staff has been extremely helpful. All the parties involved have been very helpful and very forthcoming. We are still waiting for a variety of documents to review in order to come to that legal conclusion. But as I said, I really do, and on behalf of the property appraiser, want to thank all the parties involved for being helpful and cooperative and forthcoming with information. So unfortunately, I can't give you that answer today, but I am very hopeful that we'll be able to provide you with an answer, soon.
So if it's determined that that the building is taxable, not the land, but the building is taxable, and it would be taxed at whatever the ad valorem rate is for the value of the building, right?
Correct.
Okay. And your office has not come up with any number with regard to that yet?
No.
It has not. Okay. And when did you say you would have that information?
As soon as the information is obtained, reviewed, and analyzed. So at this point, we are in the collecting information stage. And as I said, everyone's been extremely cooperative. It's just getting all the right people on the phone, the lawyers. Sometimes the lawyers aren't easy to get a hold of. And getting the data.
They're usually sitting in long meetings at night, but go ahead.
Yes, and getting that data. But I can assure you, Mayor, and the citizens and all the parties involved that we are working as expeditiously as possible to get you an answer. We understand that it is important.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions of Ms. Schwartzreich? All right. Thank you so much.
I did have a question, actually, because I just wanted to verify something that I had read earlier. I understand that as the tenant in the building, the city might be okay if you determine that back property taxes are due from I don't know how many years in the past up till now, that it looks like that would not affect the city as a tenant in the building, but it might affect the city as a tenant in the building go forward after January 2024. Do I have that correct or not?
So any back taxes for prior years, other than the city being the owner of the land, which we've confirmed. So the city would not be responsible for any back taxes. Those would be governed by whatever the lease agreements were in place for those particular tax years. Typically, there are provisions within the leases that specifically address who's responsible for property taxes. If you would not have been the city, the lessee, in those particular years, it would be the other folks involved in those lease agreements.
But going forward for January 2024, if we are the tenant in that building, and you determine that, yes, we are, not the owner of the building, so perhaps...
You're correct. There would be a tax liability.
There would be a
property tax liability, correct?
Yes, and that would then, if we... is that something that we could put in a lease that said we wouldn't be even responsible for that? I don't know, city attorney, that makes me a little nervous, that if, it's a big if. So, city attorney, could that be mitigated with any language in a lease that even if the property appraiser's office determines that taxes must be paid, property taxes must be paid, that cannot be passed through to us, or is that just not legal?
That can be a term negotiated.
It can be a term negotiated.
Okay. Well, I think the parties have indicated, though, Mr. Gross indicated that would be a pass-through and that was not going to be absorbed by him. And the gentleman from 1901 said it was already incorporated in the lease amount, so there would be no additional taxes due.
For 1901. Right, because
so,
he pays property taxes.
Correct.
Okay, so that is a big if for me, and it just makes me concerned because we don't know what that ballpark is. We don't even know what the assessed value is on 1515, correct?
Well, we know what the assessed value is on 1515. We just don't know whether it would be taxable at this point.
What is the assessed value on 1515?
Thank you.
So, Commissioner, my understanding is that because we're a governmental entity and leasing the property, if it's privately owned, they do not obtain an exemption based on the status of the city as a leasee. That's correct?
So if it's determined that the building is not owned by the city, the government entity, then the building is taxable.
Right. And so Mr. Gross is proposing that the city, in that event, or actually moving forward, pays it's 48%, 48.2% of the prorated share of taxes moving forward from January 1st of 2024.
That's what he has proposed, roughly half. So
Right.
I'm sorry,
Right.
could you tell me what that is?
If I could just clarify one thing, we were talking about the building, and thank you for inviting us here. We've been taking copious notes. Much of the determination, if the land the city owns would be taxable, is also important because there is a predominant use provision within the statute. So if, for example, the building would in fact not be owned by the government entity, and it appears as though, I think it was 48% was thrown out. So predominant use wouldn't qualify either. So really the land would too be taxable.
And what is the assessed value now of the land and the building total together?
Well, not total, just separately. Each
No,
building.
Well,
total.
Total, because she just said they would both be taxable.
Oh, the land would be taxable
Yes.
too?
Because
Yes.
it wouldn't satisfy the predominant use,
Correct.
48%. And that's
Okay.
why it was very
Okay.
helpful to be here and get the
Okay,
specifics.
so what would that total
Sure.
be?
So right now, for the 2023 tax year, it's $20,709,130.
Well, luckily, Commission, my predecessors in 1998 actually took care of that in the original lease that they assumed, and they're responsible for any taxes.
Who's responsible?
What, on the land?
On the land. If it's determined that it's taxable, that would be their responsibility.
100%?
As our tenant, yes.
100%?
Yes.
Okay, so then I would just need to know what the assessed value is then on the building to figure out what we might be liable for, correct? Because our city attorney just told us that we're okay with not being taxed on the land. So what is just the building?
It's going to be passed through, so if we were to be taxed.
Right, but the commissioner wants to know what the valuation of the building is.
Well, the value of the building, yeah.
To get a rough estimate as to what exposure we might have.
So for the current tax year for 2023, the building assessed value is $18,332,380.
So $18 million is the assessed value.
For both buildings or one building?
No, keep in mind.
Just
for the-
15-15.
15-15. For the property appraiser's records, we have two separate folios, and we assess them separately.
Right.
So this is 15-15.
So on 18 million and change, and correct me if I'm wrong, though, city attorney, we're not worrying about land now, which obviously, though, is only another less than 2 million, because we just said the total was 20 million. So we're only looking at that. Any ballpark estimate, again, because I'm not good at math, what the tax liability would be on 18,332,000 and change?
It would really be very difficult to guesstimate. I don't want to do that. However, if the commission would like, we can have our finance department run those projected numbers for you and gladly provide that to you tomorrow morning.
All right, well, we're trying to make a decision.
Yeah,
tonight.
I just wish that you had something comparable to any building that's assessed at $18 million and change, and to figure out roughly what the percentage is that would then give us a tax dollar.
So why don't you, continue on, carry on business, give us a few moments to take a look and have that for you. We didn't realize that would be a question.
Okay, yeah, we have
that you
several
needed.
people who have signed up to
That'd be
speak,
great.
so we can listen to them.
That'd be great, and I really appreciate your time. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, we have several people who signed up to speak, so why don't we get through that, and maybe Ms.
And Mayor, we'll
Schwartz,
still have a time to ask questions of our city attorney and city
of course.
auditor
Yeah,
and everybody.
Let's have public hearing,
Thank
and then
you.
we can close public hearing, and then we can have discussion.
you.
All right. We start with Mark Dickerman, followed by Evan and Sheldon Gross, if you have any additional comments you want to make, and then followed by Harry Spitzer. Mark? Hi, Mark.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. I'm here to support the Kaplan building. It fulfills the requirements of FEMA. I think it fulfills the requirements of the police, though the police chief has indicated he will work with whatever is handed to him. But I think basically the ability, because I did go out to the building. I didn't get in, but I got out, walked around the outside. And I think the access and egress from the building for the police department suits their needs. So I would hope that you will support and vote for the Kaplan building.
Okay, thank you. Either Evan or Sheldon Gross, is there anything else you wanted to add?
The light's shining bright tonight right on me. I do have a presentation. My clock has already started. I do have a presentation. I'll fly through since a lot of it has already been addressed. But is there? How do you click it through today? This way? Normally there's a computer up here. Okay. I'll wait for the presentation to come up. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
We're not seeing it over here.
Okay, there we go.
Are we good? Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Commissioners. Thank you very much. I'm here today to discuss the infrastructure, what's so important to the FLPD, to the constituents, to the taxpayers, because the FLPD needs to operate 24/7, 365 days a year. So why is it so important for the FLPD to be at 1515 West Cypress Creek? And why is it so important for the taxpayers and your constituents to be or for the FLPD to be at 1515 West Cypress Creek? Let me see. Okay, here we go. So what's so critical about 1515 West Cypress Creek is that it meets the FEMA guidelines for critical facilities. Whereas 1901 does not meet this criteria. So what is a critical facility? A critical facility is a facility. Okay. A critical facility is a facility that the community considers essential for the delivery of vital services for the protection of the community. That includes police stations and emergency operations centers. And it also includes any other assets determined by the community to be of critical importance for the protection of the health and safety of the population. One key fact of the critical facility is that it provides essential services for the community during and after disasters. Keeping the facility operational means these services can continue without interruption. There are 5 main critical attributes of a critical facility. Hurricane impact glass. As we would demonstrate, 1515 West Cypress Creek does have hurricane impact glass. The roof system at 1515 is 3 years old. We also have a protected HVAC system, a lightning protection system, and a generator, full building generator, all of which meets the critical attributes, the critical facilities designated by FEMA. Oh, I think I'm not even pushing this. Okay, so let's start with the windows. So it's important for the windows to have impact, to be impact windows. And it's important for the certification to be on every window. Next slide, please. Here's a photo of our windows and inspection reports at 1515 West Cypress Creek, showing that they do meet the FEMA critical facilities attributes. Here is the certification of the Miami-Dade PA 201, 202, and 203 certification of Class A hurricane impact certification, showing that the windows not only are hurricane impact, but believe it or not, they could withstand a missile of 9-pound large missile resistance, and that's for the first 3 floors, and then the 4th floor could withstand a small missile 6-pound resistance. Next slide. Here is the certificate of the wind speeds, showing that, as Sheldon mentioned before, it exceeds 120 miles per hour, and this is for the entire building. It's not just for the windows themselves. It's for the entire building. Next slide. So a critical aspect, or an aspect of the critical facilities, is the fact that you don't wait until the roof has to be replaced. The ownership of 1515 West Cypress Creek is very proactive. We're not reactive. We don't wait until there's damage to the facility. We don't wait until there's damage or leaking on the roof. We went out and we replaced the roof in 2020. And that is a critical aspect of critical feature of FEMA's critical facilities. Next slide, please. So another critical aspect of the facilities is that the cooling tower, which we went out and replaced in 2020, is protected from the wind. It's wind anchor. It's in a wind enclosure, screened in, and it's also anchored. And the lightning protection system. The lightning protection system was upgraded in 2020. Obviously, it's great to have a building which has lightning protection system, but it's also the way it's installed. And the way we have gone ahead and installed the lightning protection system in the parapet is, again, another attribute of the critical facilities by FEMA. The generator, as I believe the entire commission knows, is capable of running 24/7, 365, all workstations, all elevators, all HVACs, all components of the building. That way the constituents, the taxpayers know that the police are able, the FLPD are able to be there regardless if there's a hurricane, which is when they need most, or regardless if there's a storm, which is when the constituents and taxpayers need their police force most. The FEMA X Flood Zone X, this is the best FEMA rating for a property. And we are located in an X flood zone, which is, whenever possible, FEMA suggests that a critical facility be located in an X-rated flood zone as opposed to any other flood zone. And as you may know, we do have 871 spaces in parking garages, 473 spaces surface, 6.75 to 1,000 square foot parking ratio, which is really superior to the area, and that even has 16 EV charging stations on site. Okay, so it's important, as the chief and as been discussed previously, the layout. We've been working hand in hand with the FLPD to design a layout which is really conducive to their operation, to make their operation seamless. And so this is the first floor. This is the first floor site plan, floor plan, and basically it's tough to point out. But on the bottom part where it says main entrance, open door, normal hours. So visitors will enter through that main entrance, and immediately off to the left-hand side is the security desk, which is also where public records requests could be made, as it will be the public records and property data area is directly behind the security desk.
One moment.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, did PD have an opportunity to review these floor plans before they? I'm wondering about security concerns, because we do have exemptions from public record with regards to security facilities. Do you have any?
I'm sorry.
Any concerns about?
But we've seen the similar floor plans.
No, I'm saying, do you have any concerns about him showing this layout in public?
No, I'm fine with that.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I apologize. So, directly, the east and west entrance leads right into two separate interview areas. Nice thing about that area is that it is secure. The FLPD can park right outside those entrances and go right into the interview areas. There's a large training and meeting room and briefing room. Accommodates the force. As we discussed, I believe there's briefings 3 times a day. And all doors are secured with fob access system, and it is a secure property. So I did want to address that. It's a convenient, easy access for the FLPD. As we discussed, yes, there is a difference in cost. We all acknowledge that. It's basically one building provides a lot more as far as infrastructure, as far as layout, as far as synergies for operation, and so it is a $3.25 per square foot delta. But a majority of the delta is made up by the fact that we are providing nearly 10,500 additional square feet for the FLPD, which we now understand they need every square foot that they could be provided.
Can you just stay on that a second? Because I'm looking at the numbers here. They don't match what we have in our CAM.
The 1.5
Yeah.
That's 31. Look at
I'm
add the
looking.
1.15 to the 324 on the bottom. 31,000 square feet versus the additional square feet, 10,000. I mean, they ended up they increased the number of square feet and they increased the price on the right side.
All right, so there's a difference for the amount of square footage. If we're doing equal amounts of square feet, we're looking at $176,000. Is that what you're suggesting per year?
That's correct.
Right, although maybe my math is off, but I only have a difference of 9,438 square feet between the two proposals. I'm looking at 37,153 versus 46,591. Am I wrong?
How about we have the finance director look at the math?
Yeah.
Well, anyone can look at it. I think I can look at it, though. I mean,
Well, no, you told us you weren't really good at math, Commissioner, so I don't want to make any mistakes when we make a decision.
Yeah, okay. Well, I know you're good at everything, but sometimes I can ask some questions or just make a comment without your sarcasm. So here we go. I get a difference of 9,438 square feet. I don't get 10,449. I'm only going by the numbers that were given to us in the revised R1 today.
Hi, Angela Salmon, City Manager's Office. Commissioner Glassman, I apologize. There is an error in the square footage on the CAM. The square footage should be 47,602 square feet.
Hold on, 47,000. Go ahead.
602 square feet.
602. As opposed to 46,591.
Correct.
So the R1 revised that we got today was not correct?
There's been a lot of numbers going back and forth. I will take this one on my part.
Okay.
Wait, is that 47,000 to 37,153 plus the 10,449 equals that number that you just came up with? The 47,000.
So that's right. 10,500 square feet is the difference, and that equals $323,000 extra that we're not going to account for because there's a delta between the amount of square footage that each space is offering.
Right.
So,
but if I look at the delta a different way, if I look at the delta of the fact that there's about 9,438 square feet difference, and well, it's 10,449.
Whatever.
Okay, but if you divide that by the rent that's shown to us as $1,475,662, that's actually coming out to $53.49 a square foot that we're paying for that extra 9,000 or 10,000 square feet.
Well, don't you blend all these? Yeah. You're supposed to blend the price with the amount of square footage.
I understand. I'm just going through the numbers. And I did have one other question that you had already said about. I was interested to see what you said about the missiles. When you're done, if maybe you could just go back to the missiles.
I'll be happy to.
Thank you so much.
I'll be happy to, Commissioner. And then the final slide is basically whenever you're analyzing an opportunity, you have to look at it it's apples and oranges here. I mean, 1901 versus 1515. We strongly believe that 1515 is the right opportunity for the FLPD. Thank you very much for your time, and I'll be happy to go back to the missile slide if you would like.
Thank you.
Actually, if I could, I've asked. Could you please pull up that picture that I gave you guys and put it on the screen?
Oranges?
Well, it's actually going to address. It's going to address what I think is a key issue here. It's going to address. Let's just wait for the picture to come up for everybody can see it.
Okay. A picture is worth 1,000 words.
Absolutely.
Is it a picture of you?
If that's worth 1,000 words, Mayor, I'll take it.
It looks like
but that one is.
The property appraiser has some.
All right, so.
What is this?
How about that? Does anybody remember this?
Is that the school
This is
board
October
building?
25th, 2005, the Crystal Palace.
School board building.
Wilma, windows. Are they important? Are hurricane-rated windows important? I moved across the street from this building in August of 2006 when I got here. That building had broken, covered-up, boarded-up windows for years. Okay, so when we talk about missiles, the missile is an object that is coming at that window, be it wood, branches, anything that's picked up off the street by the wind and thrown out the window. That's considered a missile. And can it penetrate that window? Well, clearly, those windows were penetrated. Okay? So when we talk about the importance of a hurricane-rated window, I want you to go back and look at the school board, and I want you to think about how long we could not occupy that building. Drove past it every single day, and it looked like that for a very long time.
My understanding is that 1901 West Cypress Creek Road, that building was built before Wilma. So, is that correct? It was built before. Mr. Gross, on your no, other Mr. Gross, on your presentation, you had a slide there as to when the building was built, both yours and 1901. What was the date of 1901?
It's the other way. The slides go the other way. It's not working, so. Oh, it's
1987.
1987.
1987.
So that survived Andrew and Wilma and Katrina and all the others. Did you have projectiles that went into your windows and destroyed any part of your building in any of those storms?
As I said before, besides my inflated landscaping bills to clean up leaves and branches, nothing.
Just the landscaping. Okay.
These guys
So,
seem to know, I think these guys seem to know way more about my building. Go ahead.
So Mayor, though, the police station also survived all those hurricanes, but I don't think we want any, as you've pointed out many times, and I agree with you, that building isn't safe for our police department because it's such an old building.
That's why we're building a new one.
And you also said that we have to worry about the water plant falling down because it's also built a long time ago. And God forbid a Cat 5 hurricane comes to town and knocks out the water plant, and what the catastrophic event that's going to be. So I like every time you point out to us just how dangerous a Cat 5 hurricane could be on our critical infrastructure. So I give you your own advice, Mayor. We need to make sure we've got the strongest buildings for our critical infrastructure, including our police department.
Well, unfortunately, neither building can sustain Category 4 or 5 impacts, so that's not the measure. But I get your point. I get your point.
Yeah.
Wait, did you want to speak?
Just one point. I think I need some technical advice to get back to the drawing, the layout, the malfunctioning today.
And Mayor, I'm just not sure what the window status was at the Casey Wright building, the school board building. And I'm not sure if those windows were actually hit by anything.
No, they just fell off.
Exactly. Well, it could have been just the wind.
They just fell off.
I will remind you that the Casey Wright building, the school board building, is much further east.
Well, but they were blown off.
Right.
I was here.
Right, but nothing crashed, no missiles into
There were
them.
projectiles, but I think they came from inside the building.
Yeah, really. I'm just saying I don't think it's comparing apples to apples.
Okay,
I think both 1515 and 1901 are going to be fine.
All right, well,
with regards to safety.
you have an opportunity to comment.
I understand.
Let's just try to get through the public
I
comment.
would like to make two more comments, please.
Well, you can use your time right now. You have your time.
Thank you
Two
very
more
much.
comments.
Thank you. Two comments. I'll be very short because Evan's
Okay.
done a very thorough job. I asked for the layout to come back up for a reason. You'll note the interview area that's on the east side, and you'll note the interview area that's on the west side. These were specifically laid out for the police with their interaction so that if there were several people that needed to be interviewed for the same issue or matter, they could be separated in the building on two different sides of the building. Very critical. That's the reason why we put it. And the parking is immediately adjacent to the where those areas are. So it's access, fob access to those interview areas, and the interviewee could be taken right from the car right into the interview area. The second point is, with all due respect to Karen ownership in 1901, we also looked at buying 1901. So when he said I know a lot about the building, I know a lot about the building.
So let me ask you this. Now that you're up here, let me ask you this. Okay. So there's going to be a tax liability here. I think we can all agree. And my concern is now the exposure that the city is going to have. And, as it stands now, there's no doubt in my mind that you have the Cadillac version of what we could actually provide the police department. And maybe 1901 is the Buick version, okay? But we have a Cadillac version. Now with taxes, we're moving into the range of Bentley, okay? So that really concerns me. and I'm very sensitive to those numbers. So I just want you to be aware, this is temporary space for the police department. And this is, they're going to get great space in 2 years. And, we have to look to what's best for the time being, temporary space, what's going to accommodate the need based on how much we can afford and where do we want to go with this conversation? That's really where we are. I see this evolving in that direction. So I'm not casting any aspersions on your space. Your space is great, okay? 1901 is almost as great, okay? Maybe even you can make an offer after the deal and you can buy his space. I don't know. But the point is that we'll have to make a decision tonight. And all right, so have a seat and we'll be back with you. Mr. Spitzer, anything else you want to add to this conversation?
Or anything that you might have seen in that PowerPoint that maybe doesn't ring 100% true.
Yeah, I don't want to waste anybody's time. So again, in the proposal that we outlined, the deadline was on Monday. All the details discussed today was clearly outlined in the memo we sent. Just to clarify a few points, the main thing is Commissioner Herbst's comments as far as me going back and forth. The only time I revised was simply when it was introduced to me that the requirement might be for a larger amount of square feet than initially presented to me. That's the only change I made.
Right.
I don't want to go over the building features again. Mayor, everybody made it abundantly clear. Look, we're both members of the Jewish faith. Our New Year is coming up in 2 days. I don't want to bash people. I don't want to bash buildings. And honestly, if I would have known this is going to be,
if you do, you have to atone in 2 weeks.
I have enough sins. I don't want to add this. So the short story is, like the mayor was saying, these are two nice buildings. There's pros and cons to both. What I did is I was straightforward the whole time. I showed you backup for what I was talking about, engineering reports, tax bills, ground lease, anything that was asked from me, I provided right away. We negotiated a lease within 72 hours. As far as again, building being hurricane resistant, the whole term is you can spend hours contemplating back and forth. The bottom line is we never had an issue. We did loss runs with the insurance. There was never an issue from 1987 till 2023. That's really it.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I thank you as well. Again, like I said, I appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor, it looks like the property appraisers
got an answer.
Has
okay,
like the Oscars. The
Mrs.
Oscar
Schwartz,
goes
do you have any numbers for us?
Yes, and as a good lawyer, I'm going to put forth multiple caveats. multiple caveats.
You lawyers are worthless, I tell you.
That's right. I remember that consideration.
Yeah.
Commissioner Herbst. For these, I'm going to give you two numbers, and they're really educated guesses.
Okay.
Based on 2023, this tax year values,
Okay.
also based on 2023 tax rates.
Okay.
And it does not include the non-ad valorem. So those are the city assessments,
Okay.
fire, anything else that may apply here. And for commercial properties, they're not insignificant. So just
Okay.
keep that in mind. But that's within your purview as the city.
Okay.
So if we are talking about building value only, our best educated guesstimate would be around $350,000.
Okay.
If we're talking
Per
about
year.
Yes. Well, remember, every year stands on its own.
Right.
So this is what it would be for 2023.
Okay.
So building and land value, I want to leave you with both numbers because as we all understand from our perspective, the property appraiser's office, we're still going through all of our due diligence to determine what is owned by whom. For land and building, our best guesstimate using 2023 values and 2023 tax rates would be about $395,000.
Okay. Okay, so on $350,000, half of that's $175. So we're looking at about an extra $15,000 a month in rent on top of what we'd be paying now. So $15,000. So if the estimate, according to this sheet, the first year's rent on 1515 would jump to from $1,475 to 1650. Is that correct? No. It's about
1,650,000.
Yeah. Okay.
Is there anything else that we from the property appraiser's office can do to assist you tonight?
I think we're good.
Okay. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here tonight, both of you. Thank you so much. Okay. Ken Krasno, are you still here? Oh, yeah. Did you want to? You signed up to speak. Is there anything you need to add to this conversation? Just for questions. Okay. Anyone else wish to speak on this topic? Okay, there being none. So why don't we start? I guess we'll start at your end. Commissioner Herbst, do you have any additional comments that you'd like to make?
I do think there is one other thing I'd like to discuss, because I think it is kind of important in the totality of looking at the financial aspects of this. So several comments have been made about the cost of this, and I think I've always been pretty clear that I'm a very frugal individual, but I also understand the difference between price and value. And what I see here is a value proposition, and I think the value of the property and how it is going to impact the operational efficiency and effectiveness of the police department outweighs the price. And so I think I look at it more again from that perspective. And then I also have another question, and I may ask our finance director to weigh in on this, but it's my understanding that the costs associated with temporary relocation during the construction period can probably be included in the capitalized cost and the bond of the project, right? That's a yes. Okay. So when we look at this and we talk about this additional cost, understand this is not going to affect our budget, our operating budget. This is not going to be something you have to put extra money in the budget for the next 3 years. This is part of the capitalized cost of the construction. So when that building went from $100 to $142 million, it actually went up a little bit more because of the temporary need to relocate folks. So again, look at it in the context of that. You know, candidly, if we had not gone through with the eminent domain and wasted 2 years, we'd have had this building done for $100 million and we'd be in there. So if we want to talk about wasting money, I want to talk about how we wasted $42 million by doing an eminent domain that we never needed to do. We could have done this right from the outset, gotten everybody out of that building, knocked down the original building, and not had to design the police station to fit on the site, but rather we could have designed an optimal location on the site for the police department. So if we're going to talk about wasting money, I want to talk about the $42 million we wasted by delaying this project and the impact that it's had on the department for years.
All right,
so
well,
that's my focus. My focus is on let's look at the value that this brings to our operation, and let's look at the cost in terms of this is part of the total capitalized cost of the building. This is not an operational budget expenditure.
Okay, Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor. With everything that we've heard tonight and all the conversation, I am still in the same state of mind where we need to give our officers yet temporary, but the best temporary space that we can give them that would optimize their ability to serve and protect our residents. We are always giving them kudos and acknowledging how well they, service our city. So let's not do a disservice to them by giving them or voting for a building that will not properly accommodate them. The building that we need to select is the building that will also align with the regulations that are imposed by law enforcement agencies that will continue to ensure their accreditation. Will meet the guidelines for FDLE, for FCIC and NCIC. So it's not only the cost and the value of the building, we need to look at the entire need for the space. Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Glassman.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Dwayne, I have a few questions because I'm looking back at some of the emails that you sent, and I think again, I want to say that I don't think this is clean, and that's what's bothering me. There are too many ifs, too many maybes. So you wrote to the City Commission on Wednesday, August 30th, that please be advised that I spoke with a representative and legal counsel for Cypress West, LLC. They have indicated that Iowa College Acquisition Corp. Will not consent to their lease becoming public record, but has agreed to terminate its possessory interest in portions of the premises to be occupied by the city. Therefore, the draft lease between Cypress West LLC and the city will be contingent on the execution of a termination agreement between Iowa College Acquisition Corp. And Cypress West LLC. Do you have that execution of a termination agreement between those two entities?
We have received a document that is identified as a Sixth Amendment, purported to be signed by representatives of Kaplan.
I'm sorry, you just said purported to be signed?
Yes.
How about the other party?
Yeah. What about, that's...
Mr. Gross is supposed to provide a copy that he signed. There are some digital issues with...
I apologize. It's the Fifth Amendment, and it was, and I think Angela got a copy of it tonight. It was signed digitally yesterday, and it was difficult for the city to read it, so I brought the wet signed documents to Angela today. She has them.
Okay. So both parties, all parties have signed this?
All parties have signed it, and the space is available tomorrow. And we have the workstations are included, the office furniture is included, everything is ready to go.
Okay.
Thank you. Also, I'd like to understand from your perspective, Mr. Spence, do you have a comfort level with both 1901 and 1515? I'm just seeing one is very clean and easy and simple, no questions, no wondering about another possibility of added on rent that we don't know about. I just see one much cleaner, but do you have any reservations or do you feel comfortable executing a lease for 1515 the way it's been presented to us this evening?
So I'm not a real estate attorney, and I wasn't the main attorney that reviewed the document. Lynn Solomon of our office has reviewed the document, and she has indicated to me that she's comfortable with either lease. So I'm comfortable with Lynn Solomon's judgment.
Okay, and what are we going to do about the fact that we just heard that there is a possibility, and I believe it actually will happen. I feel comfortable that we're not going to be responsible for anything in the past with regards to back taxes, but I am concerned with January 2024 moving forward, which then brings us to the possibility of $1,650,000 a year for 1515 versus $970,000 for 1901. That's a huge delta, and I don't see that delta as really compensating in any way for the fact that one building is so much more superior than the other. But I do see that as a huge dollar amount for the taxpayers to realize, because then we're looking at a difference of, between the two buildings, possibly $680,000 a year. Are we able, and how will we know that you will definitely be able to put into this lease that if indeed back taxes are levied and also taxes going forward from 2024, January 1, 2024, that we will not see that as a pass-through? Are you confident that we're going to be able to have that and that agreed upon in a timely manner so we can get this moving forward?
Partially. All right, so the document before you in section 2.03E does contain language addressing back taxes, as mentioned by Mr. Gross on the at the podium, that the city would not be responsible for any back real estate taxes prior to January 1st of 2024. If applicable, and only if there are changes in the property's current tax-exempt status, tenants shall pay additional rent its prorated share of real property taxes from January 1st, 2024 through the end of the lease term. So that's the question that we need to get clarification on. So I'm clear on. So as it currently stands, the city is agreeing to pay the additional rent, including taxes, from January 1st, 2024, moving forward. That's 48.07% for the building that we will occupy. The language that Mr. Gross provided to us yesterday afternoon also deals with a 24.04% of the proportional share of the total property taxes. As I stated, the 1998 lease requires the lessees, which is Cypress West, to pay the taxes if the property appraiser, as they sort of mentioned tonight, determines that our ownership of the land is taxable. They are required to pay that. But what we need to get clarified tonight is whether or not the language being proposed with regards to the 24.02% would pass through the taxes that they're required to pay on the city's behalf back to the city.
Well, I don't know. I can't speak for my colleagues, but I'm not comfortable with assuming any of that tax liability or exposure from January 1, 2024, if indeed we see that all of a sudden this building is assessed based on what we heard tonight, possibly anywhere between $350,000 and $395,000 assessed value. I'm just not comfortable assuming that extra and then getting us into the ballpark of $1,650,000 a year, again, versus $970,000. And I don't feel that the 1901 building in any way would jeopardize our police force, or else I wouldn't even entertain this. But I'm looking at a building that, as far as I'm concerned, is just as sound, will be able to withstand any kind of storm just the same as 1515, and I do believe gives us the adequate amount of square feet in a secure way with secure entrance on the first floor. And I do believe that all of that is possible at a difference of saving the taxpayer $680,000 a year. I do want to make just one more point, Mayor. I don't agree with the comments made about the eminent domain, that we wasted that time and we wasted $40 million. And I actually don't remember when we considered the eminent domain, I don't remember any of the charter officers at that time complaining about that or telling us that that was a bad idea and that we shouldn't move forward with that. So I just want to say that I don't agree with that comment, and I don't think we wasted anything in terms of dealing with as fast as we could. Thank you.
Commissioner Sturman?
Okay, I want to say something I think that we're all feeling up here, but I just want to say
What are we feeling?
Well, no, maybe I'm feeling it. Both of the owners, I want to, first of all, both of you guys, I want to apologize, and I want to thank both of you here, because I mean, you might seem hostility one versus the other. And that's, you know, John, I think, summed it up great. We'd love to, if we could, accommodate both of you. But, you know, we were in a bind. We needed to vacate the police department immediately. So we solved one problem. We found ourselves in another problem. We're sitting, working out of a hut, shared bathrooms, officers having no meeting rooms, police officers and motorcycle people out in the outdoors in the elements. And we were in a huge rush, and we needed to find a place to put the headquarters. And both of you have stepped up. Both of you have been very accommodating. Unfortunately, we could only pick one of you, but I just want to apologize that, you know, these things were fluid, things were changing. We pushed it through very quickly because we were in a bind, and I want to apologize that we're putting you through changing back and forth, and I want to thank you guys for being so accommodating for us, very much so. That being said, I am going to echo John's sentiment. For those who serve us, I do thank the sentiment of the police chief. He will accommodate anything that we give him, but again, I don't want to accommodate. I want to give you guys the tools that you need, the proper place. I think if one of them and obviously the one in Kaplan is the one that I think we need to go to. That's the place we need to go. I strongly feel that way. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. So let me just add a few comments to what's been said. You know, when we were first discussing the idea of building a new police headquarters, I think we were constantly wondering where the best location would be. And so at some point, the commission decided it should be located on the same site. Why did we just say that? Because we felt that it would save taxpayer money and because we had sufficient real estate in order to be able to accommodate a new building while still keeping the operations going in the existing building. When the designs came back, it was determined that we needed extra land, and we found an opportunity there to purchase that land from an individual who ultimately settled with the city, and we were able to purchase that land. At no time did the police department indicate in any way that the construction of a building next door would interfere with their operations. And I found it a little odd that this issue even came up, because I know that there are a number of buildings throughout the city, whether they be downtown or on the beach. In particular, I was looking today at the Gables projects next to the Water Garden, where the two buildings are practically kissing each other. And at no time did we ever receive any complaints from any of the residents or owners of that building adjacent to the new construction project that the construction was interfering with their ability to use and occupy their space. Nonetheless, the police department did indicate that they couldn't function with the construction next door. So whether or not the choice was made to locate the new station on site or not really became an issue that we didn't know about when we were first deciding the location. The delay that was caused, I think, had a lot to do with COVID, and the cost increases had a lot to do with post-COVID, none of which could have been predicted or anticipated when we passed the bond for public safety, and that's why we settled on the amount for the public safety building that we did. So I don't want to cast any aspersions on decisions that were made prior to now, because I think they were the best decisions that were made given the factors that we had to deal with at the time that those decisions were made. Now, I think it's all been agreed that the two buildings have a difference in price. And again, I think that the 1515 building is certainly the superior building. I think it's the Cadillac version of what we could possibly ask for. And I think that 1901 is a very good building as well, based on the representations made by the owner. And my real concern now is the cost. And why do I think that's important? I mean, we can, it's been said that we can capitalize the cost of the rent into the bond, but again, we still have to pay for it. And it's not like it's a FEMA reimbursement or anything like that. We are talking about taxpayers still having to foot the bill. In this case, we have 20 or 30 years in which to pay it. But the point is that we still have to pay it. It's still a burden on the taxpayers. And whether we pay it now or whether we pay it over the course of a number of years, it's still an obligation on the part of the city and thus the taxpayers. So we've been seeing a lot of things going back and forth in terms of square footage available and operations and floor plans and costs and security deposits and things like that. So Mr. Gross, would you mind just coming up to the podium one more time? Father Gross. I think Father makes the decisions here. So Evan, you can come up too, but I'm just saying. Now, we need your help. Okay. I kind of figure where the votes are here, but I like to see as much unanimous votes as possible. We can get close to that as best we can. I'd like to see this commission act 5-0, not split votes. So we have an issue with the taxes, and you've already said that we don't have to pay back taxes, which of course makes a lot of sense. We weren't there. Why should we pay your tax bill? But going forward, you know, as this process continues, as we continue to go back and forth and negotiate these terms, we need to have some sort of accommodation from you. I think everyone would feel more comfortable if we had some sort of accommodation where the full tax burden of the building going forward is not imposed upon us as tenants. And is that something that you can consider as we decide tonight whether or not to go forward with your building or with 1901? Since 1901 already has the taxes built into it, you know, this is going to be a significant difference for the taxpayers to pay. What is your response to that?
I'd like to address that issue.
Please.
Our operating costs are $10 a square foot right now. I think the calculations that were provided adds about a $3 additional or expense to make it $13 a square foot. When we compare that to the 1 East Broward property,
we're not comparing one.
No, I understand that. I'm just going to give you a point of reference. The cost per square foot for operating expenses, which includes the taxes, is over $16.75 compared to our 13.
Well, we're comparing 1515 to 1901, so why don't we stick to that? Those are the issues here tonight.
I understand. I just want to give you a little bit of background.
I know the background, and I know what we've committed to. I think right now, let's focus on the issues that are at hand. It has nothing to do with any other property that we're a part of. We're just focusing on 1515 and 1901.
Yeah, I realize that. But to put the scope in perspective, we're still $3.75 less than what you're paying at 1 East Broward.
So you keep changing the subject, and I guess you're trying to avoid having to answer the question.
No, I'm not trying to avoid.
Now, I'm not cross-examining you, but I just want you to I want you to understand that we have people that we have to answer to, okay? And while I think that your building is the superior building, there's no doubt about that, I also have to there's a balance. We have to weigh, pros and cons. We can't have everything we want in life, okay? We could try to get as much as we can for the best value. So I'm looking for the best value now for the people of this community. And I want you to be a partner with the city and to understand. I know you don't live in the city. You have a beautiful condo, I understand, in Hillsborough, so God bless you. But the point is that we have to be careful about the money we spend.
And I'm sensitive to that.
Okay.
So
how sensitive are you?
What are you suggesting, Mayor?
I'd like to put a cap on the amount that we would be responsible for as a city for taxes per year.
Would it include the non-ad valorem tax?
Dwayne, what would be the non-ad valorem tax? Just the fire assessment fee? What other non-ad valorem tax would be associated with this property?
The stormwater and Laura Reese, is there additional assessments on this particular property besides that?
Yeah.
That is stormwater and fire is what I am aware of. That.
What about the other taxing authorities? Because we heard tonight from the property appraiser's office that the non-ad valorem are not an insignificant number, she said. The dollar amount, she said, is not insignificant for a commercial building.
What was she referring to when she was saying that?
She said for a commercial building, the non-ad valorem is not insignificant.
I think I'm getting support from the rear.
I'm hearing clippity-clop of heels.
I'm getting reinforcements coming our way. And it's not my wife.
Be thankful.
Sorry about that. Mayor and Commissioner, Laura Reese, Director of Office of Management and Budget. For stormwater, it can be significant for these sort of properties because trips are a large portion of the assessment methodology. So depending on how many trips are generated from a commercial building, it can be significant.
Well, we're going to add to those trips.
Right. So there's a calculation based upon it's like a transportation index of how many trips it costs. So that's what she was referring to. In addition, the fire assessment is based upon square feet of a property. So that's
on a
what
commercial
she was,
property.
Yes.
Right. So, can you give us a ballpark? What we'd be looking at? Not really.
Not at all. I'm
but
sorry.
but not
Yeah.
insignificant. Not insignificant.
Yeah, it would not be insignificant. Because, we could ask our consultant, Stantec, who develops the rate methodology, to give us that. It wouldn't be this evening.
Right.
But
We have to make a decision tonight.
I know.
You know, and
But does that money come right back to us?
Yeah, yes, but it would come into our stormwater fund, so we'd have to use it for stormwater.
But still, it still gets back to the taxpayers.
no, we don't. No, there's no haircut that the county takes or anybody else takes. That comes directly back to us.
Correct, for both of those. The fire assessment would come directly to the city.
Okay.
Yeah.
But how about the stormwater?
Stormwater would come to the city's stormwater fund. The fire assessment fee would come to the general fund, so it could be used for expenses such as this lease.
But it all comes back to the city.
Yes.
Okay, so
For
that's not
non-ad
that's
valorem.
not a big concern. Yeah. Okay. So we're okay with that, Mr. Gross. But in terms of the meat and potatoes taxes, the regular ad valorem taxes, we're being told now that it could be in excess of $175,000 a year. Okay, which is a lot of money. Okay, so is there any way you would agree to perhaps cut that down to 50% of that, so that instead of our taking on 48% of the responsibility, that we would take half of that, 24%, to make this deal tonight?
Mr. Mayor, I do want to cooperate and I do want to be a partner.
I know you do.
So
it's Rosh Hashanah.
It's coming. It's coming.
And that's
please, God, hear me.
Mayor,
hear me out.
Mayor, that's called Jewish guilt.
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
Please
just so
hear
you
me
understand what you're doing.
Here's what we prepared. I'm not so sure that we're going to get taxed. That's just
I am.
I understand.
Oh, but if not, it's good. God bless us. We're not going to get taxed. I'm just saying, in the eventuality, can we put into the lease that should it be a taxable situation, that the city's maximum would be, we would say instead of 48%, it would be 24% of the obligation.
What I think would be fair, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for allowing me to do this with you, although I don't want to be accused by Commissioner Glassman of changing the terms and conditions again. So please, with that caveat.
Well, I'm changing the terms and conditions.
We'll eat $1 of tax imposed on the property, which would be equivalent to about $48,700, be $1 per square foot, if we're taxed, and we'll put that language in the lease tomorrow.
So what is that? I didn't quite understand that. What was that?
Well, if we're taxed, it's $3 and some cents per square foot, and what we would be willing to do is eat $1 of that tax,
Like a third of it.
1/3 of it. Yes.
So
you can't go to half. You can't go to half.
Mr. Mayor, we already.
You can't take it with you.
I don't know. My wife's hooking me up. My wife's hooking me up with the internet in the crypt, so I don't know.
So I need clarification because of the bifurcated nature of the taxes. So we're talking about the taxes as it relates to the building, but what about the tax as it relates to the land, which is already at that 24?
I think she quoted it at approximately $3.90, and that's what I was figuring on. Something like, if we take 25 to 30% of it, that would be equitable, which would be about $1 a square foot, and we would be willing to put that in the lease, that same section that you have in taxes. That if the property is taxed by the city, and if the land is taxed, we'll contribute $1 per square foot to the tax liability, and the city would be taking the responsibility for the balance. It's about 25 to 30%.
Well, I think that's helpful.
I appreciate
but
it.
But I don't know if we're there yet. But could you max it at $1 a foot for us?
No. No, we actually did a very good deal with you. I mean, of course, we absorbed, and I know you really don't know this yet, but we absorbed the $50,000 in the costs to relocate Kaplan. We also absorbed, and you don't know this yet either, but we're absorbing access control system costs to separate and bifurcate all three systems. So the police will have their own system. We have our own system as a landlord, and Kaplan will have their own system. And there may be one other point to consider. If Kaplan does stay in the building after May, I think we will meet the public use threshold for the property. And but we won't be taxed on the land because Kaplan would be using it for an educational purpose. So it would be the city would be 46,000 square feet. I think Kaplan would have space in the building, which would take it over 51%, which is what the property appraiser said today.
Okay, so if you're anticipating no tax, then maybe my proposal is just for conversation. But if we could agree on something a little bit better, it wouldn't matter one way or the other if we're not taxed, right? So if we could do on something better, it's like we're just talking right now. But
I think that we're being very fair.
How about $1.50? And I think that would be fair, and I could vote for that.
Evan just told me to split it, so he's giving you a quarter out of his money. He's coming out of his pishka. We'll go with $1.25. We'll split it.
Okay.
Thank you for the opportunity. I haven't had the opportunity to negotiate like this on live TV in a long time. Thank you.
Thank you.
What's behind door number 3?
Right. We're going to have to call you Mr. Wonderful now.
Thank you very much.
Okay. All right. So we have before us a resolution to adopt a lease agreement with 1515 West Cypress Creek Road, and based on the terms and conditions that have been presented to us as amended just now. So, Mr. City Manager, I want you to chime in on this and tell us what comfort level do you have with regard to this space vis-a-vis 1901?
So, Honorable Mayor and Vice Mayor and Commissioners, we're very grateful for you all to consider and further negotiate, and we would be very pleased to proceed with the proposal as mentioned. And would like to get and secure that space as soon as possible for police.
Introduced. Second.
Okay, well, okay. Just hold a second. Okay. And Mr. Spence, what's your comfort level with regard to the lease terms and its protections for the city in connection with the issues that we discussed tonight?
I think I have clear direction from the Commission based on the negotiations, and we can finalize that last provision that was outstanding.
Okay. All right. So there's been a resolution that's been introduced. Anybody in the audience who wishes to speak? Any further comment from the Commission? Okay. Please call the roll.
And just to clarify, that's introduced as amended?
As amended.
That's correct.
Okay. A resolution of the City Commission of the City of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, approving a lease subject to conditions for real property located at 1515 West Cypress Creek, authorizing the city manager to execute the lease and any and all related instruments subject to certain conditions, delegating authority to the city manager to take certain actions, and providing for an effective date. Commissioner Glassman?
Before I vote, I do just want to say, Mayor and colleagues, I so sincerely hope that this works out. I so sincerely hope that we provide the best possible space for the police, but I just do not feel comfortable, and I don't see this as an easy process going forward. Too many questions. It's not clean. It's not clear. It's a bit convoluted. I still don't even see a finished document in front of me. And although I'm hoping that this will move forward in the best interest of everyone, especially the police department and the public, I feel that the cost is way too excessive. I don't think that the gains that we're going to get equal the value of the extra $504,000 to possibly almost $700,000 a year over the other buildings. So because of those reasons, although I'm so hopeful that this does work out, I just don't have the comfort level that it will work out. So I'm going to vote no. Thank you.
Okay.
Vice Mayor Beasley Pittman?
Yes.
Commissioner Sturman?
Yes.
Commissioner Herbst?
Yes.
Mayor Trentalis?
Yes. And that resolution is now approved. So I appreciate the Chief of Police coming tonight and assisting us. I'm totally relying on your representations tonight for having voted the way I did, and also on the great bargaining of Mr. Gross and helping the city move closer to helping to save the taxpayers a few more dollars.
And Mr. Mayor, one more person. I thank the police officer and chief of police and the city manager. Mr. City Attorney, this was very tough on you. I know we kept spinning things and yelling and screaming. I want to thank you for your work on this too.
I really want to acknowledge Lynn Solomon for her hard work and diligence in reviewing all of these
Is she here
leases.
tonight?
She is not, but she is watching and paying attention, and she did a yeoman's job on these negotiations and getting the lease ready.
And please thank her on our behalf too. Thank you.
Okay. Yes.
I also would like to say thank you, express our gratitude for everyone's help with this.
Don't get too comfortable. You're moving in 2 years.
And that's also a great thing. And I also would like to say thank you to all of the men and women of the Fort Lauderdale Police Department. They've done an extraordinary job, and I think in unprecedented times for them. So to see the teamwork and see them pull together what they've accomplished with this challenge has been amazing.
Okay.
It's been an honor to be a part of it.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
All right, there being no further conversation or discussion, meeting adjourned. Thank you.